Okay, so that's the end of the free modeling part. There is my terrible model. A few little pieces, one arm band. So what I wanted to get into today is how to set and apply materials. Start off with, of course, the material tab, which is right down here. Material properties is right down here. And because I use the default cube, I have that default material applied to it. It is great. I can rename the material right here to whatever I want. Robo material. And it appears like so. If I change the color, the base color right here, you will not see any update because of our preview mode. So last week we just used wireframe and solid view. So base color plus the color selector and all sorts of other settings that we'll get into later. In order to see this color change, I need to switch up here, up the top right, from solid into material preview to see our materials, or render preview to see our lighting and materials. So I switch over right now. There we go. Pink robot. And if I switch to rendered preview, we can see some lighting. Rendered preview. Right now I'm using the principled BSDF, bidirectional scattering distribution function, if anybody cares. I can see the other standard surface types by clicking this little green dot. We can see the standard BSDFs available to us. I'm just going to keep it at principled for today, since it's very powerful. But there are a whole bunch of other ones set up, and they're basically just different configurations of the principled put together in different ways. Quick setup ways of getting glass or emission or diffuse or glossy. Blender has recently switched from the way they handle reflections and glass and stuff in Eevee. They've introduced ray tracing, whereas formerly it was screen space reflections. It's still kind of in prototype stage, so maybe it's not quite working exactly the same. But I'll go through glass and stuff in another way. And then their bigger render engine, everything looks nicer, but is more taxing. But just, you know, where they are, BSDF. Now, I can add more than one material to my model. And please mute me if you're watching the stream. It'd be distracting to hear my own voice 20 seconds later. So, if I want to add a second material to this model, I need to add a slot for it first. There's a little plus and minus, so add or remove materials from over here. Plus or minus, makes sense. And I'm just going to add a secondary material with this plus. It's just an empty slot, there's no material there yet. I need to create the material by clicking New Material. New Material. Robo Material 2. Oh, not typing that in. And I'll change this to a blue color. Now, can't see that anywhere on the model just yet because we haven't told Blender where we want to put this new color. This is where the Assign button comes in very handy. So let's say I want to select specific faces and turn them blue. All I need to do is select those specific faces or an area of faces, I'll go into face select. And let's say his eyes. And this mouth area as well. I want to turn it blue. Oh, yeah. I can just select. So select my faces first that I want to change. Then select my material that I want to assign, Robo Material 2, and click Assign. Assign. Blue colors attached. And we can continue to add as many colors as we want to add to our model. I'll add 3 more and start assigning them around the place. Or maybe 2 more. 2 more. Plus, plus, and then new. I'll say Robo Yellow and make it yellow. Robo Green. And add green. And I'll just rename these ones so I know what color they are. Although I can see with a little preview what color they are. Get into my X-ray mode so I can select front and back faces. So X-ray off, I can't see through the model. X-ray on, I can. That just helps me if I want to grab the entirety of this antenna. Turn it yellow, assign. Or the entirety of these claws. And turn it yellow. And then I can work my way around and start assigning different parts of the model different colors. Say green in the middle. How about some green tank tracks? Why not? Or using my loop select, Alt and click, I can grab individual loops. Shift and Alt to grab more loops. I can grab alternating loops for a kind of pattern. We'll say blue. And restricting color palettes is also a good way of character designing. Too many colors and it just looks like Rainbow Guy. Restricting to a couple of colors can really, solidify your character model. Solidify, I suppose, just give it a better style, a more consistent style. Take a few minutes to experiment with assigning. I'll answer any questions anybody has. Yes. and substance designers that are related. Blender has its own sculpt tools for Sure. But we can put them all into one model. We just select both of them together. Do you want more than one model?
So I have different colors at the moment.
Oh, do you want to see them? Yeah, very nice. Blue plan. That's better. Again, restrict the color palette as well.
Yeah, because I just wanted to change the inset to a different color to kind of like make it pop a bit, but it actually doesn't let me select it because it's selecting multiple things at the same time.
Okay, just select both together. And then go to edit mode on your model. Should be selected. But there is a way of combining. We've got cubes and cube points. There is a way of just combining them into one if you want.
Right, okay.
Three is the shortcut to get to it. And this little dot is very helpful for zooming in on what you have selected.
Oh, well.
Yeah, and then you're orbiting around it as well.
Cool,
So
nice.
the focal size. Okay, so move that face and you'll see you might have a screw on top of it. Oh, or shift. Shift. Shift click. Oh, well, we can take a look at your settings and see if you're using processor and so on. Looks like everything moves pretty smooth. Really nice. Merge by disk. There's a single at the top. See it right there. So the subdivide is subdivide is linked directly to the regular one. But the scale is linked added drag to the top. What else you have to do? What did you want to do? Text inset. I might have to, this subdivide here, you might have to drag out the scale again. anybody have a question? Is Blender on that?
I'm just sitting here watching you, I guess.
Dang. Maybe you could be like a co-pilot to somebody today. Hey, who's that over there? All right, so we're going to move on from this. One, if we want to add image textures to something. I'm not going to do it on this model, but I will very briefly look at the object properties panel, just so we can rename our object. We could also do that in the outliner. I'm just going to rename this robot or one-armed bandit. One-armed robo. And there it is as one-armed robo over here. So I'll hide one-armed robo. I'll go back to object mode. Back in object mode. And you see I'm unsaved. Always a good idea to save your work. Let's do that as well. Save as. Up, up. Robo materials. So, reference images and bringing in material images as well. Blender has a very easy way of bringing in reference images, and if you want to download what we have for this week, we're going to work on this little guy for a moment, but also there are two textures that I'm going to use right now. You might as well download everything, but Crate Text and Earth Text. And this is also a texture, and so are these. And you can add images through the menu, but I generally and always just drag these things in. I will create a reference image for you to work on. There is a Crate Text. Nope. Nope, but there is an add-on to do that, which is useful. That's my alarm. Whoa. Just scared me for a second. I'm late. Wake up. So, if you want to work to reference, this creates a reference image. We can, of course, move this thing around. But generally, you'd want to snap it to a viewpoint. So if I jump into my front view, I'd be able to see it straight on, or to my side view, or into my top view. Oh, it's got thickness. No, it doesn't. That was an illusion. So again, the fastest way to get something that's snapped into a way that you want is to go to your object panel. And you see it's basically come in facing your viewpoint. So whatever way you're facing, it puts it right in front of you. Let's say I want this to be flat on the ground. All I have to do is right-click on my location, reset to default values. Yep. And I can do the same with the rotation. And basically it just zeroes them out. 0, 0, 0 location, puts it in the center of the world. 0, 0, 0 rotation, puts it rotated completely flat. So a good way to start with reference images. Reset all to default values. And reset all to default values. There we go. Location, for some reason, moved. And again, that's in our object properties. You see it's got the name of empty. You can rename it reference image, create image, whatever you want. simply drag an image into your world and it will be created as an empty. Yeah. So any image that you have, you can drag in. You can drag in the Earth text as well. I'm going to be using that. And then if it was a reference image, say you've done a sketch of some kind of sword or a character, maybe you want that to be 90 degrees so you can see it from the front. Again, you just go to your, I tend to go to my object properties and look at the axis I want to switch on, enter 90 degrees to make it 90 degrees up. So rotation X, 90 degrees, brings it facing front. Oh yes, and I should name this. And then the Earth, you wouldn't model something based on a flattened out map of Earth. But if I wanted that to be rotated in the 90 degrees on the other axis, facing the right, let's say, I would say rotate 90 on the Y and 90 on the X. Or the Z even. The images also have their own image properties. So only while I have an image reference selected do I see the image properties panel down here. Or data. And that gives us other size controls as well as opacity. Sometimes things can be too intrusive or you want to design and see the model behind it. We have an opacity slider down here for that. And yeah, default size that we can slide up or down, which just like in something like Photoshop, we can bring up by the corner handle. No. Wait, hold on, can I? Yes. Sorry, with scale, we can distort the object the way we would an object, a 3D object. But from the image panel, it keeps it completely straight. We can also set a limit. If we only want to see it in our orthographic view, we can hide it in perspective. So now I can't see that duplicate I've created until I jump into one of my orthographic views. Applying these to our model, again, we have to look at our material properties tab. So I'm going to create two objects, the UV sphere. So I'll go to add menu, add mesh UV sphere. And I'll add a cube as well for our crate. So the sphere for the planet Earth, the cube for the crate. Cube. I'll move it over here. UV sphere. So those two shapes, the UV sphere is set up specifically for taking UVs, taking spherical unwrapped UVs like this unwrapped map. And you don't have to do much unwrapping with it. So to apply this image that I've imported, it's in my background data. To apply it, I select my sphere, I go to my material properties. It has no material, so I'm going to add a new one. I'll name it Earth Mat. And then instead of adding a color, I'm going to click this little yellow dot next to base color. And here we're going to select image textures. You're presented with a lot of options. There are procedurally generated textures, brick, checker, gradient, magic, noise, sky, Voronoi, wave, white noise. We're looking for image texture. And from here, we could open an image texture, but because we've actually already imported the image we want into our scene as reference, it'll be available in our cache in this little drop down right here. There it is, Earth text.
Separate texture window, is that for just mapping specific textures onto faces, or?
You mean this up here? Oh yes, that's for managing textures when you're painting with them or applying them. You can use them as brushes. Yeah, it is also for handling the textures we import. So you'll find the ones that we have in our cache in there as well. But yeah, generally I use that when we're like painting them. So Blender has a nice little mini Photoshop version in here for actually painting the textures on. Hey, but there we go. The entire world. Wow. We've done it. We are the master of the universe. You can see it does a pretty decent job. Ah, well, let us mess with our surface properties because we have a roughness value. We have an index of refraction. So if you want a very rough Earth, bring it all the way up and it should reflect less. Although I'm not in render preview. Yeah. Also, we can see those individual faces. So we could subdivide way more, but a simpler way, a hack way of doing it, and a way of saving processor speed is just to shade this as smooth. We right click, see straight away, shade smooth, shade flat. Right now we're using flat shading. We can see all the individual faces. Shade smooth blends the individual corners together on the shader, and now it looks smoother. It's still shiny, yes. I bring my roughness up, much less shiny. Full roughness, less of a shine. I bring it all the way down. You can see my individual light being reflected like it is a marble. Yes. So what's happening here is the UV is taking spherical projection, sphere projection. UV sphere is designed to automatically read it that way. For more complicated models, we can't just project onto each face as easily. We need to unwrap them. However, with a cube, we have cube projection. It just means we have to apply it to our specific cube. So if I want my crate to take on the crate-like aesthetic of a crate, yes, projection. Yeah. Yeah, and HDRIs as well. They're projecting all around. So, with the cube, again, we need to add a material to our cube. In material properties, and I'm going to rename this crate mat. Again, click the base color little yellow dot and select image texture. Image texture, and yeah, right here. Little yellow dot. Image texture. To add the image texture node, more on that later. And then I can select crate text. Perfect, right? Absolutely perfect? No. No, it's not. Yes. So, if you remember, I was just talking about sphere projection. The UV sphere, because it's called the UV sphere, is perfectly set up for oh wow, so reflective. The UV sphere is perfectly set up for sphere projection. The box, however, needs you to do a little bit of behind the hood work, and we'll have to do it in edit mode. So I'm going to jump into edit mode on this and make sure all of my faces are selected. And then under UV, we can unwrap to fold the box flat. Smart UV project, very useful for complicated objects that you don't feel like adding scenes and unfolding. It can do a good job of taking every face and putting it down. But what we want is cube projection. That way it knows to project based on the face as normal. So it'll project on all 6 sides of this cube evenly. Yes. Very useful for cubes, obviously, but anything that is very angular and square, and you have a lot of straight up faces, you can get away with just cubic projection. So long rectangular objects, buildings, that kind of stuff, cube projection can work for you. So again, edit mode, UV, cube projection. And now we have a crate. And once we have something like this, we can add more crates on top. And we can cube project onto that new shape as well. UV.
But why do you actually add the material there by default?
Because I'm in edit mode on that object. So any
Oh,
new
yeah,
piece of
yeah,
mesh,
yeah.
I'm not in object mode, sorry. Any new piece of mesh I add is going to take on that property. Still not quite exact. But UV cube projection, it does the best that it can.
Is it not perfectly projectable because it's not like it's a
Because
target?
now it's not it's not a regular cube anymore. It's I'm making a little wooden man. Mokujin from Tekken. Yeah, thank you. A man of culture. And this is probably a good a time as any to point out, if I add another material slot right here, instead of creating a new one, I can use any of my previously created textures in any of the models in this scene. So if I want to give him Robo Red Eyes, I can go ahead and assign that right there. There, a terrifying boss to face at the end of your game. It is I, Box Lord. Fear me. Yeah. Yeah, it'll basically do the 6 axes, top, bottom, left, right, front, back, in that way. It's forcing it in like that. If we do sphere projection, it goes all the way around. It tries to project that way. In fact, let's see what it looks like with sphere projection. UV. Sphere projection. It looks warped. It's trying to project on every facet, like all around this sphere. It doesn't look right because there's a lot of flat surfaces. And again, yeah, cylinder projection. If you have something cylindrical and you want to put a texture on it, use cylinder. Cube, cubic shapes, as well as straight cubes. Smart UV project, because it's kind of complex now, it'll do its best. Oh wait, I shouldn't unwrap it actually. That would be a bad idea. There's no seams, it would look bad. So cube projection all at once is trying to project that entire create. Yeah, so it's quite stretched now, if rather than doing it one piece at a time. Oops. Oh, a good shortcut. Select linked. Just lets me grab individual pieces. Because I created these all as separate cubes, I can select linked just to get one piece at a time. Shortcut L. Well, because I haven't joined these meshes, they're actually separate cubes. I use this drawing create cube method. Yes, we can merge these things together, but it'll be a little bit messy because I have a face underneath there. So to be really neat about it, you delete that and kind of merge and create cuts. But we have merge. Oh wait, no, merge at center. No, not a quick way. We actually do need to do a little bit of messing about. But anyway, never mind about that. Yeah, that'll collapse things together. I mean, they're already in the same object, so they are merged as one object. But yeah, if we were trying to animate it or have it like bend and flex.
So anytime you create like a primitive or like any like mesh inside in edit mode pretty much, it will already merge the two together.
Yeah, they're basically in the same folder. They're in the same bucket together. Cube project on its own looks a lot better. Okay, last thing before we take a short break. External data. So we have external assets inside of it. We have textures and stuff like that. Sometimes you can send a file somewhere and forget to bring those textures with you. It can be useful to turn this setting on. External data automatically pack resources, and that will store all the textures, the images that you have in this Blender file. You don't need to worry about losing them between transport. Packed 3 files because I have 3 images in here. The Blender file itself. But yeah, probably a .pak is in there somewhere, but it's in the Blender. So you don't need to worry about the image files now, they're there.